Hi, everybody, and welcome to She Rises. I am Leslie Kuster. I am the CEO and founder of Back from Bali, which is a women's clothing brand that I started way long time ago. And because of the success of Back from Bali, I was able to write my book and become a best-selling author. And the book is called Seven Keys to Seven Figures: The Women Entrepreneur's Guide to Money and Freedom. And definitely check out my website, which is lesliekuster.com, because on my website, I have a free gift for you, which is my resource list, which has recommended podcasts, recommended coaches, recommended books as well. So definitely check that out at lesliekuster.com. So today we have another fabulous guest, and I am really happy to have her today. We are talking about philanthropy today, which is a shift from business women. And her name is Jan Solomon, and Jan received her master's degree and PhD in international relations, and she was studying the critical leadership role that women play in development organizations. Jan became involved in the work of the Hunger Project, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, in 1978, raising funds and awareness about the fact that world hunger was no longer inevitable and that the will to end it needed to become an international priority. And the next phase of the work was to bring to light the fact that resourceful, creative people living in conditions of chronic, persistent hunger would be the key actors in ending their own hunger when empowered and supported to do so, and especially women. A world without hunger is the vision of the Hunger Project. And with that, I would like to bring onto the stage and welcome Jan Solomon. Welcome to She Rises. We're so happy you're here today.
Thank you so much, Leslie. I'm really excited to spend some time with you and with your audience. Thank you again.
It's my pleasure. So, what I would like to know is that what motivated you to become so involved in the Hunger Project? Like, how did it speak really to your heart? I mean, many people hear about hunger and do nothing, right? So, why did you do something?
Well, in the beginning, when I first got involved in 78, my father in law was one of the major donors and fundraisers for the Hunger Project. And it became a family project. And it really did speak to my heart. I had been an activist and volunteer and a lover of humanity my whole life up until that point. And what really touched my heart was when I had my daughter and I saw her in my arms and I thought, wow, mothers in the world. There are so many mothers who cannot feed their children. And that was just unacceptable to me. And that was the major motivating drive for me, is to do whatever I could do with the family. That was just so great that we had a whole family that was involved. So that's how I made the turn toward that.
So you talk a lot about like how the Hunger Project is different because it actually like gives the power back to women in the community. So like I don't know anything about this, and many people listening might not, even though they've heard of the Hunger Project, they might not really know like what you do exactly. And I know a lot of the focus is handing the power back, the resources back, the creativity back to women. So can you like explain how this works?
Well, one of the things is the development that was created after World War II was more shifting resources, funds to the developing world. And it really wasn't ever tapping into people, people being the heart of ending their own hunger. It was more like charity and more like, we're over here and we have all these resources and we're going to give them to you because you can't do that for yourself. So it was a mindset, a development mindset where people were not seen as productive. In particular, women were not seen as productive. So the Hunger Project just saw that as a huge obstacle, a barrier to finding out what do we need to do to end hunger, and what do hungry people, or we would say people living in conditions of hunger, what do they need to end their own hunger? So maybe it starts with people. And then as we marched through this new revelation that people were the source of ending their own hunger, we saw that women were completely left out of the equation.
Wow.
They are the collaborators. They are closest to the land. They are closest to the children, the family, and they were left out of the whole decision making process. And when you say bring women to the table, it was literal and figurative. So that was where we started to focus. What do women need? If women are going to play their role, which would be a key role, a critical role in ending hunger, what do they need to be empowered? So the Hunger Project began looking at that, and they needed leadership training, they needed resources, they needed collaborative uh, programs and projects, and they needed to have the men open up and let them in. So I could talk about the different countries and how it works in India or across Africa or in Latin America. It was all different how the systems were set up to keep women out of the process. So we're looking with women, how do you break those systems, and then bringing the men on board? Because when women participate, everyone eats, everyone is surviving and thriving. So, how do we make sure that men see that and support all the work that the women are doing? It's a beautiful process, and it works. It works. That's the great part about it.
Can you give some examples, like what you literally physically do with working with the women there? And I could imagine, I mean, from what I'm hearing, and I'm not surprised from what you're saying, is men are could be a bit of the barrier actually to making some of these changes. And you kind of have to, like, especially in these countries where they're maybe not where our country is or what Western countries
Mhm,
are, with
mhm.
the ability that that women have, the options that women have. So I can imagine that you have to also work with educating the men too. So can you give some examples and some things that you actually
Sure.
do in the communities?
Sure. One of the big programs in India in particular is something called the Vision Commitment Action Workshop. So what's happened, there's a new law in India in the last 20 or 30 years where women must be a part of the political process. But if you talk about women who are uneducated, illiterate, marginalized, disempowered, now they're being elected to democratic office.
Hmm.
And so, what do they need to be able to be successful at that? Well, they need training. They need to be able to see a vision for their community because they're elected for a whole community. They're called the panchayats, like a district or a region. And so we're training the women, the vision, commitment, action. They create a vision for their community, for their panchayat. And um, it's really a beautiful thing when you see them begin to grow into their leadership. And then it's there are a million women, by the way, elected to democratic office in India, more than the rest of the world combined, if you can
Really?
imagine.
Wow.
Yes. So the Hunger Project, we're not being able to train all of them, but we've trained thousands and thousands of them to be able to see how to run a village, how to run their panchayat, how to make priorities, how to change their own mindset. A lot of the Vision Commitment Action Workshop is about what is your mindset about getting handouts? Or can you change your mindset to, I am the leader, I am the one that can make it happen, and I'm going to collaborate? It's a whole new way of thinking, collaboration, decision making by women. And then the men start to see, wow, when the women are in charge, our village is getting better. Our children are eating. We're having schools. We're getting loans to be able to build a school. We're being able to dig a well. So that's just a program that's all over India that the Hunger Project works with. And I just want to talk quickly about one other program in
Yeah,
Africa.
please do, because this is the interesting part. Like we hear about the Hunger Project, they're doing all these things, but of course, for someone we don't really know what they're doing. So
Right, right.
listen and would love to hear the
Well,
stories.
yes, Africa has a particular, we're in the Vision Commitment Action Workshop is in India. We have the epicenter strategy across Africa, 8 countries. And what happens is the people have to come together again, and women must participate.
Well,
It's required. So the women and men, they decide what they want to have in the epicenter, and then they ask for land to be given by someone in the village. And it's usually a man that owns the land, but he gives the land, and then they start building this building. It's an L-shaped building. They're all like that across Africa. And then they have inside of them maternal health care, a bank, a place to store food, a place to cook and can food. You see, I get excited about it. It's like a place for women and men to begin to work together, and it's required for that. And you see that where the epicenters are across Africa, they're being able to create a sustainable environment. So they store food. So during a drought or during some type of an emergency situation, the epicenter keeps the community alive. And and women are working in the bank. They're handing out the loans. They are managing the healthcare center. They're teaching the children. So women just play a critical role when given the opportunity. So I'm going to say that about all of our programs. Is about saying women need to be in this process. And as a matter of fact, they need to be out front because they're natural leaders. We are women, we are natural leaders. We are decision makers. We know about the land, we know about the seeds, we know how to plant, we know all of that. And I'm talking about our partners in Africa, but it's to recognize the power of women that's been completely untapped in our world. And can you imagine if we start to tap into that from a village in Africa, a village in Latin America, a village in India, all
yeah,
the way tapping into it in America, in the developed world,
yeah.
of us all working together as women. It's extraordinary vision that we have.
Who came up with this original idea that we really have to focus on the women? Like, was it like not working in other ways before?
Well, the woman's name is Joan Holmes, and she was at the time the executive director of the Hunger Project. And she said, something's not working.
Mm,
We were what we call on the ground. We were on the ground in India. We were on the ground in Bangladesh. We were on the ground across Africa. And we kept seeing that women were not in the process of ending hunger. We knew that people living in those conditions were key to ending hunger and that we must have. But when we would go to meetings, I went to one of those meetings in 1991 in Senegal, and the men said, "Well, the women can't come to the meetings.
uh,
It's just going to be the men." And we, the Hunger Project, said, "Well, then we're not having the meeting if the women can't come in." And then they said, well, they can't wear pants if they're going to come into the meeting. And so we said, they'll wear whatever they want to wear. And so it was
uh,
just a fight to get them in the meeting, much less to start strategically planning for the end of hunger in the country in Senegal. So it's been a struggle. And when Joan saw, this was 1991, so it was right around then when she started to see those were perfect examples of women being left out of the process. And it was from that level of a very high level all the way down into the village where women were excluded, marginalized, invisible, as a matter of fact. And us thinking that we were going to get to a world without hunger, we knew that was not ever going to happen if women were not. I mean, just think of women, of what we possess. It just blows my mind that there was ever a thought that women should not be part of this process. So that was where it all began, was starting to see we can't do this without women at the table. And it was really literal and figurative at the same time at the table.
And once this started, you started to include women in it, then this is when you saw changes and you saw like that it was actually possible to end hunger if you get the community and women
Mhm.
involved. Is that right?
Yes, it was a breakthrough in the whole idea of development itself. And what it led to was another breakthrough that happened about 10 years ago, where people started to see that all the development in the world, from the biggest organizations with all the money, were still thinking that it would be top down to end hunger, top money from the top down, resources from the top down, creativity from the top down. And we said in the Hunger Project, okay, now have women in the process. What we need now is we need to have people see that it has to be led from the community, so bottom up. So, including women and men, we knew women were in the process, but it was still all the ideas, the policies, the programs were top down. And that is never going to work with anything. So, as women and men kept calling for, we need to lead our own development, then that started to happen. And there's a whole organization with billions of dollars right now. It's called the Movement for Community Led Development, that it is people, men and women now working together. And their main focus, and this is only in the last couple of years, is to look at the systems of inequity that are keeping people living in those conditions from creating their world without hunger. Now, what are those systems of inequity? Patriarchy is a big one,
Mhm.
and keeping women, not fully expressed, fully participating, political, legal, education. Those are all systems in the world that have so much inequity, unfairness built into them. And so the Hunger Project's shifting more toward empowering women in particular to transform those systems of inequity so that they can fully participate and end their own hunger and that of their families. Because when women are empowered, they are not just about themselves. They're ending their own hunger, their family, their community. Everyone can benefit when women are involved. We know that, right?
We
I'm
know
not,
that.
I don't have
Yes.
to tell any of your audience. Oh my goodness. And I wanted just to I don't know how much time we have, but I wanted to make a
We
point
have
about
time. I love hearing everything you're saying. It's
I
so
wanted to make
inspiring.
a point about inequity, because the word and the phrase equality, inequality has been a big part of social justice and our era of our lifetime. But what we're seeing, because now if you envision three children standing behind a fence watching a baseball game, and the tallest one can just barely see over the fence, the next one cannot see, and the little one can't see at all. So if we were talking about equality, we would give them all a box to stand on. So now you give them a box, the tallest one can see, the next one can just barely see, and the little one, he can still not see, but they all have an equal box. That's equality. If you talk about equity, then you give the tall one a box, you give the second one two boxes, and the smallest one three boxes. Now they're all seeing the baseball game over the fence. That is equity. So it's about fairness.
Hmm.
It's such a more profound distinction that will have people starting to think a different way, in particular about women. What is equitable for women in these circumstances? And I mean around the world, all of us. What is equitable? What is fair? And so I want to just to point that out, because that is really going to be the phrase of this century. that we're going to be looking at fairness, giving people the actual opportunity to participate fully in their own development, their own destiny, and literally in the creation of their future and the future of humanity. I'm going to even say it as a big picture thing, just like that. And, if we really pull this off, if we create a world without hunger, without social justice, without war, then
Mhm.
we will influence the flourishing of humanity for millennia to come.
Mm.
So I want to say that again, the flourishing of humanity for millennia to come. And I think that's important because women get that. We're not just about ourselves flourishing or our family. We're about it all flourishing. And I'm talking about humanity and nature and the planet itself. So, I think I probably wrote this or said this to you, but this is our time. And
Yes.
this is our time. We may have wanted to live in a safer world or a less complicated world, but we're here now and we're called to this moment. And we can deliver because that's who we are. That's It's kind of built into our DNA, if you want to say it that way. And I just love, that you speak to business women and people who are really wanting to be successful, and that they also have this other part of themselves that will flourish as well. So, women who are making a lot of money, and I think women should, because they are going to know what to do with it and how to invest it in our
Yeah.
world. I'm counting on women doing that. We are counting on, and we see that. We see that happening with women who have money.
What I'm really hearing is that the difference between masculine power and feminine power.
Mm,
And feminine power is does things in a whole different way, right? The masculine power it generally comes from like a leader, okay, and push, 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 and feminine power comes often from relational relationships and from connecting to nature as well. And it's not any less powerful. In fact, it's for sure equally powerful, but it's a different way. And so what I'm hearing is with the 100 Project is that is literally like what you're doing. You're really kind of investing in giving feminine power to the communities and to the women, because
mm,
that is where change is going to happen, is through a new way of doing things, a
mm,
different way of doing things, a different attitude towards it. And I don't remember who said it. It's some really famous, I don't know, it was the Dalai Lama or Mother Teresa, or maybe you would know, who said like the change in the world is going to come from women. And this I really, really believe, which is why I so much to speak about and encourage other women business owners to step up and stop what I
mm,
talk about is get out of what I call the princess tower, which is basically some tower, out there where they will be saved by a husband or by a father or by something other than themselves, to
mm,
get out of the princess tower and to make something of their lives and to create money, because without those resources, well, simply they can't be independent. And it's through the independence of women, which is what you're doing with the Hunger Project. You're giving women independence, right? So they don't have to be controlled and dependent on others, but you're
mm.
giving them independence. And that's the same thing, which business can do for women too, because when women rise, everybody rises, and you're
Yes.
doing it on a much bigger level, which is why it's just so empowering. But would you agree that, or not agree that this is sort of like a feminine power way of doing things?
Oh, definitely. And I love what you wrote about in your book is about freedom. Because when women are empowered to take on their lives and what they and to be entrepreneurs, they basically become that. It gives them so much freedom to do whatever they wanted to do with their lives. And it's true in India, it's true in America. It's that freedom is so important. It's really one of my primary values that I have is freedom. And
We share the same one.
good,
I
good.
understand
Glad.
that.
I'm so
Yeah.
glad about that. Yes, I completely agree with you of how women are really the leaders of today and tomorrow, and that must be empowered. It reminds me of a myth that's held by the Baha'i faith, Cherokee Indians, indigenous tribes around the world, that in this century, the first century of the third millennium we're in now, their myth says that the bird of humanity has been flying now for thousands of years with one wing, the male wing, and that wing has become strong and violent to try to stay flying. And it's
Oh,
been flying in circles. But in this Sophia century, which we are now in, the first century of the third millennium, the myth says that the female wing will start to spread and soar. And I noticed you use that number 5 in your 7 keys is take action and soar. And that's what all the myths correspond now, that is the time we're in, where the female wing and then the bird of humanity will soar. So
mhm.
we're all like in the perfect place and the perfect time. I mean, those are indigenous stories that are handed down and religious stories and it's strange that they all coincide for this time that we're living in. But I adopt them as true because I see it happening. We do. We see it happening. And we see the pushback against it. So we're making a difference when there's a pushback against women, because we're we're shedding everything to become who we are, and we have to be that now. That is imperative for the future. The
That's
future.
right. That's right. Like I like to talk a lot about time too. That time is ticking, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. And just in my own personal experience with things that have happened, that we have to seize the time. Like if if a woman is not fully empowered, is not satisfied with things, is not living her full potential in ways, then it's time to do something about it. And I kind of want to ask you, like, how has philanthropy changed you? Like waking up in the morning, like, do you feel more fulfilled, or what has it done for you personally?
Mm. Well, I want to start by saying the word philanthropy means the love of humanity.
Mm,
So that make it actually has me get up in the morning. It has me wake up in the morning to know that I have a life purpose, and that it not just about me. It is about me, but not just about me, but it's about all of humanity and nature. Um, and it really has shaped who I am today. It's an interesting thing that happens to us when we take a stand, when we make a commitment. It that commitment starts to shape us. And I think you talk about it in your book about speaking language, how you create it by speaking. And that is what I do every day. I talk about this every day. If you're around me every day, you're going to hear something about the flourishing of humanity for millennia to come. It wakes me up in the morning and gets me going. I'm not saying I don't have a bad day once in a while. We all do, right?
yeah.
But it's my purpose in living is to be that for myself and for humanity. And yeah, what can I say?
Well, I mean, it's so nice to hear something positive, right? These days, the way you're speaking, I love it. You do a lot of work. You fundraise, you speak, you travel to countries, you do a lot for others as well. And I know I hear it feeds you as well. One of the things to me about feminine power is also recognizing the times when we have to um, nourish ourselves and take care of ourselves and protect ourselves so we could also give to others. So you do a lot. So how do you nourish yourself? How do you take care of yourself? Like, what is it that you do that kind of feeds you so that you can give to others? Because that is how we get our feminine power also, is by going inside and feeding ourselves.
I have several things, but one of the things I wanted to make sure I spoke about before I leave today is the idea of stillness. And
Hmm.
stillness is different from silence or meditation or a doing thing. We are thinking, doing people. And we've been thinking and doing now for our whole life, and for humanity has been thinkers and doers. And what we've forgotten about is that we're beings. And the thing about stillness is it is quiet, but it's actually not thinking or not doing anything. And it's very hard for human beings to do that. But when you can get yourself to that place of stillness, you can get to that place by looking at an amazing painting or at a sunset. But when I do it as a practice for minutes at a time, minutes, practicing stillness so that I be in touch with beingness. Being and beingness is we are one. That is beingness. And that refreshes me, renews me, regenerates me because I'm not there as an ego or as a single person. I am all of it at the same time. And that experience is, I have to do it at least once or twice a day. Um, but I try to do it not as a thinking or doing thing. This is a new thing for me. It's just to be still. And I invite everybody to try that because what we want to do is do something or think something. You talk about that, mastering your thoughts, thinking is, we just, if we can let it fall away, that is a very peaceful place to be and in touch with all the universe, the whole universe, everything. You are become everything. And we are one. Once we realize we're completely interconnected now, we're no longer in an era of separation. We have moved into this new era of interconnectedness. And as soon as we realize that and accept it, that is when so much will fall away of the injustice of the world.
Mm, so beautiful. So beautiful. And I can't agree with you more. And that it's actually key number 7 in my book, which is, practice non-doing, because
Mm,
I found it was in my spiritual life and in the practice of non-doing, of stillness that you're talking about,
mm,
uh, that truthfully, that's one of the reasons my business thrived. And that's not the only purpose to do it, but that is where we get our energy and the connection to oneness and a connection to our higher selves, a connection to our hearts,
mm,
is so important. And this is part of the rising of feminine energy and
mhm.
feminine power. So I just love that. And just being with you here right this moment, I like, you're exuding this energy of stillness and love. I could just feel
Mm.
it straight from you right now. So this has been so beautiful. And I have
Beautiful.
like one last question for you, which is, as we end this, which is, can you just maybe share one bit of wisdom that you would like to leave She Rises audience with, and just say a few things about that?
Um, I wanted just to talk about money. Actually, the last thing is that if we look and see how we are about money, we've come from a background of scarcity, a scarcity about money, scarcity about love. We have scarcity about time. And if you're going to master your thoughts and learn how to do that, master your thoughts about scarcity and give yourself the freedom to live in abundance, because we all have an abundance of time, an abundance of love. I mean, we're oh, look how much love we give each other, just even on this call, and in particular, abundance of money, and to have an appreciation for that, because anything you appreciate, it increases. So appreciate the money you have, appreciate the love you have, appreciate the time you have, and you will begin to experience an abundance of all of those things, and master your thoughts and catch yourself when you say, I just don't have enough time. I just don't, there's not enough love in my life. I don't have enough money. Those are just thoughts that come from the past. They're not even yours. They come from the past. Somebody's handed those to you, and you can just let them go and create the new thoughts about abundance.
Beautiful words of wisdom. Thank you so much. You are so inspiring, and a true example of a leader, and leading with feminine power and leading the women of the world. And that's what this show is about. She
Mhm.
Rises is helping women rise, whether they're in African countries or India or wherever, or right here in one's own communities. It's about helping women rise and showing women that it's all possible. This is really it, no matter what your circumstances are, right? No matter what they are. A woman in poverty in India to someone, living in, Boca Raton and in some condo. It's
Mhm.
all possible, if with mindset, with support from others, and
Mhm.
belief that it can be done. So you are a perfect example of that. So Jen Solomon, I want to thank you very much. I just want to put up on screen here, it's ticking at the bottom. This is the website for the Hunger Project. So anybody can go to the website and get more information about the Hunger Project. Is that the best place to go, Jan, if anyone?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much for posting that.
Good. Okay. So definitely check out the Hunger Project. There's, I'm sure, many things you could do. I hope this episode of She Rises has inspired you. If you are interested in coming on the show, please let me know. You just contact me at lesliekuster.com. It's all about helping other women rise. Jan,
Mm.
thank you again. It has been such a pleasure, and I will see everybody on the next She Rises. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leslie.